I've always been autistic, but I didn't know it until about 5 years ago. And one of the first things that I remembered was my ability to recall memories from a very, very early age. Such an early age that the majority of people that I would report them to would say, no, no way can you remember that, because supposed fact that nobody, it's just a thing, people don't remember anything further back than 3 or 5, whatever it is that people believe. Let's get into it. One of the memories I have, it's an interesting one because I can report this to family members that were there at the time who were adults, but I was only a kid. And I'm not really sure, I might have been 18 months, 2 years old, somewhere there, because my sister is less than 18 months younger than me. She's about 14 months younger than me. She was crawling around on the floor, and we were at my grandmother's place, a tiled floor, and there was these wooden blocks that I was kicking around on the floor. And my grandmother came in and I stopped kicking the blocks around. And there's my sister just innocently crawling along. And she looks down, my grandmother, and says, "What are these blocks doing here?" And I said, "Shana did it." That's my sister. Yeah, she did it. And my grandmother looked at me and said, "You can't blame Shana for everything." And I remember a sudden sense of dread, because up until that point, I literally did believe that I could just say that she did whatever, some thing that shouldn't have been happened, something that I did. I could tell people it was Shana because they didn't see it, I thought. And this was this sudden realization, oh my God, I can't blame her. They've just told me that I can't do that. They're on to me. They know what I'm doing. Right, so I've told this to family and they're like, "Oh, well, hell, we remember that. How the hell do you know that?" So they can't dispute it, of course, right, because they were there. And, so with the majority of people, you watching this now, you're just pretty much taking my word for it. I don't have any evidence to support this claim, except for one thing: synaptic pruning. Now, this is something that all brains do to a certain amount. Neurotypical people, or neurotypical brains, will prune the synapses and dendrites and stuff in our mind, particularly things that are no longer useful or needed. For the most part, that's what they're deemed to be, and frees up the mind to do other things. Whereas autistic people, our brains do not do that, or not very much, at least anyway. Now, it's not 100% proven that this is linked to these early memories, but it certainly does explain that ability for us to recall those earlier memories. And it's linked to other things as well. Because savant syndrome, people who are like Rain Man, who have a eidetic photographic memory, this is also linked to the synaptic pruning as well, apparently. And that's another thing I notice as well, that a lot of us have a very focused memory and been able to recall memories from further back than what the average person does. And when I've looked into this, so this is my personal subjective experience, it's been that compared to the average person, when we're talking about an event that's happened in the past, so not 5 years old, but 10 years old, 12, 15, 20, whatever it is, or a conversation that happened yesterday, whatever it is, I find that compared to most people, I'm able to retain a lot more of the details from those conversations than most people do. Yet, when I've looked into it, I can't find any evidence that supports that autistic people have better memories. Not sure why I can't get that. I didn't look very hard, but but I have found this to be a thing, that people who are autistic do have these kind of memories. One example I can give of this, again, I say subjective, this is including people I have met. And years ago, I worked with this young bloke. He was only an apprentice. He might have been 18 or 19 or something. So this was like in 2011, somewhere there, 2010, 2011. Lovely young bloke. And we got to talking, right? So back then I was in my late 30s, and we started talking about cars, and we started talking about old cars, so well beyond from when he was born. And he knew more than me. Like, he was talking about Holden, Kingswoods and stuff, and even older cars than that. And I've got pretty good knowledge of Australian cars, being from Australia, growing up in Australia, loving cars. And I was struggling to keep up with the knowledge of this kid. And I clocked it straight away and said, well, there's something different about this guy. What is it? And, again, I didn't know I was autistic. But at the time, they said, oh, yeah, he has Asperger's syndrome. Yes, it's not a term we use anymore because that's autism level 1, which is what I am. I'm autistic level 1. And what had happened is I noticed something unique about him that was different to other people. But what I was really seeing also was how similar he was to me. And side quest here, that was a special interest. Not going into that right now, but what we're really talking about was his memory, how he was recalling all these details about these old cars. And again, as I've interacted with other autistic people, I have noticed this ability to have these very focused memories. I think they call it an episodic memory, the ability to go back to the past, but also with special interests like that. Apparently it is to do with the lack of synaptic pruning that we do. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, as I said earlier in this video, that I've found that people just don't accept when I say, hey, I remember this thing and told them the age. Neurotypical people will tell me that it's not possible. Well, that's why I'm talking about this. It is possible. Lack of synaptic pruning is why we are able to, or more likely to be able to. And the fact that neurotypical people do synaptic pruning is the reason that they don't. And again, this is one of those things. Autism in general, I've found the more I learn about it, the more people I talk to, it is very misunderstood. People have their own stereotypes. They've got their own ideas of what really happens and how autism works. And whenever you say something that's contrary to what they think or how they think the world works, they won't accept it. And so that's it. And I'm curious of your experiences, what experiences you've had around this. Do you notice that you have a better memory, especially episodic remembering details and conversations that have happened when you talk to people? And having said that, by the way, I don't have an eidetic memory. I don't have a photographic memory. So that's why, for the most part, it's not very noticeable to people until there's certain things where, I said, conversations, people can't believe the detail. Or family, if I tell them, hey, you remember this that happened? They're just blown away. Look, they go, oh, well, I remember that now that you've said that. But, that's a common thing that my family will say to me, well, my God, your memory. But anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it if you do have any. Have a good day.